G'day guys, and welcome to our second installment of Smashing Subjectivity. Today we're going to be dealing with the concept, the end justifies the means. Now this is one we really got to tackle, because I've heard several people engaging with this theory, and taken to its logical extremes, it justifies some of the worst excesses of human depravity. Now to start, let us first consider the three types of actions in relation to ethics. We have good actions, evil actions, and neutral actions. Now just by itself, the phrase the end justifies the means doesn't actually specify what kind of end justifies what sort of means. Is it referring to morally neutral actions, morally evil actions, or morally good actions? Well, the general consensus is that the end justifies the means says that certain morally evil actions can be undertaken as long as they produce some sort of morally good end. The general consensus is not something like, you can get a haircut to justify changing your appearance. It's usually something like, you can push someone in front of a boulder to save a larger group from being crushed by the boulder. But first we must talk of consistency. Does the end always justify the means? Or does it have to rely on some ethical consensus to provide a net positive moral interaction? If the end always justifies the means, then you can never have a system of enforceable ethics, as the end of not conforming to the end justifies the means can be justified by any arbitrary reason, as the reason is the means to the end of nonconformity. However, only the masochistic would support this idea fully once they realize, out of fear, that all kinds of horrible despotic actions can be wrought upon them. For surely, if the end always justifies the means, you can walk up to the person making this claim and punch them in the face because it makes you happy, or some other such action. Thereby, most people who subscribe to the idea that the end justifies the means would have to say that there has to be a net positive moral interaction in order for the end to justify the means. The problem with this, however, is that you cannot possibly know all the consequences of your actions at the time of you acting them out. It therefore becomes extremely difficult, if not outright impossible, to prove that your action had a moral net positive result, as actions often have a domino or butterfly effect. Say for example you came across a dog attacking a small child. Now obviously you would attack or kill the dog to save the child from being killed itself. You could postulate through the end justifies the means that the end of saving the child outweighed the means of killing the dog, and therefore your action was a net moral positive. However, what if your killing of the dog upset the owner of the dog to the point where he killed himself? Could you then claim that the end of saving the child justified killing the dog if it resulted in the harm of another human being? And of course, it doesn't stop there. What if the brother of the person who committed suicide, thinking upon his brother's death, was distracted whilst driving his car and crashed it? He doesn't have insurance, and now he has to do this massive payout to the bloke he crashed his Mercedes into. And the bloke he crashed his Mercedes into, now he can't get to work, so he gets fired, and his family gets evicted from the home, and blah 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 blah. You see how this goes. It's just endless misery and suffering. What I'm essentially trying to get at is that there's no cap on the breadth of the means, via something like free choice or personal responsibility. All actions that are a consequence of the achievement of the end can be considered a facet of the means. In this, I hope you can see the impossible balancing act that is determining whether an action has a net positive moral connotation. There are of course problems with the utility of the end justifies the means. Namely, how do we determine when the end justifies the means? As far as I can see it, this can be conducted in two ways, as I explained in my previous video, the greatest good for the greatest number of people. The first scenario I envision is a societal consensus in which everyone mostly agrees in which scenarios the end can justify the means. However, a societal consensus is subjective and malleable, subject to change over time essentially is what I'm saying. Consider the issue of homosexuality. This used to be considered an immoral act not even 100 years ago. Now it is a non-issue. Delegating morality to a group opinion fails the test of consistency, as what is considered immoral can change on an arbitrary whim. The second scenario is one in which an authoritarian group determines when the end justifies the means. However, when looking at even modern governments, which are not, by comparison, despotic to some of the reigns we've seen throughout history, I have to ask the question, will the determination of when the end justifies the means be determined justly? And looking at issues such as taxation, I can say definitively that this answer will be a no. It is inevitable that the group that determines when the end justifies the means shall do so in their own self-interest. This is just about everything I have to say on the subject. If you have anything more to add, something I've missed, something like that, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments, and I wish you all the best luck in combating subjectivity in our modern discourse. Thanks all for sticking around, and have a good one.